Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 14th of May of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where the Russians during the previous 36 hours have carried out the biggest massive attack since the beginning of the special military operation. The sources are saying that during the previous 36 hours the Russians used 1,623 air vehicles to attack the territory of Ukraine. We're talking not about drones, we're talking about drones and missiles altogether. So once again, this attack started yesterday in the morning of the 13th of May of 2026, and yesterday there were two waves of attacks, and during the first wave of attack on the 13th of May of 2026 the Russians used 139 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. During the day attack of the 13th of May, the Russians used additional 753 drones, and during the overnight attack, the Russians used 731 drones. In total, once again, 1,623 drones since the beginning of the 13th of May of 2026, which makes this attack the biggest since the beginning of the special military operation. And of course, we have lots of updates, videos, pictures about the consequences of attack. The Russians managed to deal significant damage, and we have lots of proofs about this. So let's discuss everything in details, and first let's talk about maps. Once again, let's discuss the map that was published yesterday. This is the map that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources during the 13th of May of 2026, and just one important thing, one important detail, that yesterday the Russians were mainly attacking the western parts of Ukraine. For these purposes, the Russians used at least two waves of drones. One of these waves was moving along the border with Moldova. The second wave of drones was moving along the border with the Republic of Belarus, just with the purpose to bypass the Ukraine's air defense forces and to attack the western parts of Ukraine. And yesterday we received lots of interesting, lots of important videos on this matter, how the Russians were attacking different objects of critical and military infrastructure and energy infrastructure as well through the western parts of Ukraine. But as for the previous night's attack, this time the Russians didn't attack the western parts of Ukraine. During the previous night, the Russians were attacking mainly the central part of Ukraine, especially the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. And this is the first map that was published this morning by pro-Ukrainian sources. And here we see not just yellow lines, here we see red lines, blue lines, pink lines, orange lines, which means that the Russians during the overnight attack were using not just drones, the Russians were using all types of missiles they have. They were using cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, and so on. And once again, lots of explosions were recorded. Later, another map, more detailed map, was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see approximate visualization of drones and missile flight paths during the massive attack last night and this morning. In total, the following were deployed across the territory of Ukraine: almost 700 drones, 35 Ha-101 cruise missiles, 18 Iskander missiles, 3 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. And as you can see, according to this map, there were at least 3 main centers, 3 main focus areas of the Russian side. According to this map, we see that the Russians were attacking the Kremenchuk oil refinery, which is located between the cities of Kyiv and Dnipro, along the river of Dnipro. The Russians were attacking the Starokostiantyniv airfield, which is located in the western parts of Ukraine. And we can see that probably 90% of drones and missiles were attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. So let's discuss everything in details, but before we start, once again, let's summarize these two strikes, these 2 days, starting from the 13th of May of 2026 and ending by the morning of the 14th of May of 2026. And this is the total map. Here we can see every single road, approximate roads between the beginning of the 13th and the beginning of the 14th of May of 2026. And as you can see, the Russians attacked almost every single square kilometer of Ukraine. The Russians were attacking the territories along the border. The Russians were attacking the territories along the line of combat contact. Lots of explosions recorded in the western parts of Ukraine. The capital of Ukraine was attacked, the city of Kremenchuk and the Kremenchuk oil refinery, and of course the Starokostiantyniv airfield. So now let's talk why the Russians were attacking all these objects and what exactly the Russians managed to achieve with this attack. During the previous night, first attacks were recorded around the city by the name of Kremenchuk. More precisely, the Russians attacked the Kremenchuk oil refinery, and several videos were published on this matter. This is probably one of the first videos that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see a camera that was filming the situation around the oil refinery. We don't see explosions, we just see some shadows, some lights. We don't see missiles themselves, but according to the author of this video, here we can see fire and first consequences after the Russians attacked the Kremenchuk oil refinery. And the sources stated that when the Russians hit the Kremenchuk oil refinery, the Iskander-M ballistic missile likely targeted the Kremenchuk oil refinery, and a large fire has broken out. The Ukrainians probably still use the Kremenchuk oil refinery as a fuel base, as something to store fuel, with the purpose then to supply and support soldiers and troops on the ground. The second place that was attacked by Russians, according to this map and according to different sources, was the Starokostiantyniv airfield. For some reason, the Russians didn't attack the Starokostiantyniv airfield yesterday. We have this picture of strikes, and we don't see anything around this airfield, which means that either the Ukrainians didn't reveal positions of their F-16s, helicopters and aircrafts that the Ukrainians were planning to use as air defense forces, so that is why the Russians avoided this territory. But most likely before the overnight attack, the Ukrainians most likely deployed F-16s, probably aircraft, some helicopters, with the purpose to bring down drones and missiles of upcoming overnight attack from the Russian side. But most likely the Russians attacked the Starokostiantyniv airfield in advance, and as a result of this attack, most likely the Ukrainian plans were ruined regarding air defense forces and using additional aircrafts to bring down the Russian drones and missiles over the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. And when the Russians suppressed air defense forces, when the Russians probably even destroyed another air defense system in the area of the Kremenchuk oil refinery, the Russians, without any resistance, without facing any resistance from the Ukrainian side, began bombing and attacking the city of Kyiv. And during the previous night, we received lots of videos and updates on this matter. For example, in this picture, we can see first seconds during the night after another missile or another drone hit some building on the territory of the city in its southern part. In these pictures, we can see the consequences of attack during the night. As you can see, according to these pictures, the Russians, as a result of attack, destroyed another gas station on the territory of Ukraine and another gas station on the territory of the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. Here we have a longer video. Here we can see how civilians were moving through this gas station. We can see that the gas station was completely destroyed as a result of the drone attack. Here we can see another building, multi-story building, a civilian construction that was destroyed as a result of the overnight attack. Almost the entire building was reduced to ruins. And here we can see how different forces and services of Ukraine were trying to stabilize the situation, probably to evacuate civilians that were blocked below the ruins. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the territory around some business center in the northern parts of the city of Kyiv. Here we can see how civilians were evacuating computers and so on. And here we can see the same area, but from another angle. As you can see, almost the entire block, almost the entire micro district was reduced to ruins as a result of the Russian overnight attack. So once again, as we can see, according to all these pictures, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to deal significant damage to the city of Kyiv. Lots of objects were damaged and destroyed. And this is the video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. And here we can see how the Ukrainians, using air defense systems and interceptors, were trying to destroy hundreds of Russian drones. Obviously, even from the perspective of number of drones and missiles that the Russians were using, we see that it seems that something like useless to use 20 or 30 missiles to destroy several hundreds of drones or missiles that were launched by Russians. And now the most important thing, once again, the Russians, since the beginning of the 13th of May of 2026, have carried out one of the biggest attacks since the beginning of the special military operation, using 1,623 drones and missiles altogether. And now the most important question, whether the Russians are going to continue or the Russians need a pause. Because if the Russians need a pause, of course, this will allow Zelensky, Ukrainians to regroup themselves, to bring additional reinforcements, to fix something, to repair something, and to prepare themselves before the next wave attacks, or maybe even to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. But this is the first scenario, and this is the first scenario that we have seen, almost every single time after every single massive attack that was carried out by Russians. But who knows what is going to happen today? The Russians used a record number of drones, which means that maybe this upcoming night, between the 14th and the 15th of May 2026, the Russians may once again attack the territory of Ukraine with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to regroup. And this is a very important situation. As for the Ukrainian side, during the previous night, they also attacked the territory of Russia, and this picture was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and according to this picture, the Ukrainians used 260 drones to attack the territory of the Russian Federation, and as you can see, there were at least 2 or 3 waves of attacks, but as of the morning of the 14th of May of 2026, we haven't received anything on the matter of consequences of attack, whether the Ukrainians managed to hit something or to destroy something. We haven't received anything like this. Now let's return back to Ukraine and let's continue and let's discuss a few more very important updates that we received during the night. During the previous 24 hours, we received the video from the city of Kryvyi Rog, and in this video we can see the object of military infrastructure of Ukraine, some military plants that Ukrainians were using to produce equipment, probably maybe some parts for the military purposes. And in this video we can see how the Russians were attacking this object of military infrastructure with several grand drones, and as a result of this attack, this infrastructural object was destroyed. And as for the city of Kryvyi Rog, also several strikes were recorded along railways, which means that the Russians were also trying to reduce the Ukraine's logistic capabilities and not allow the Ukrainians to bring additional forces in the direction of the line of combat contact. As of the line of combat contacts, as for the Zaporizhzhia direction, during the previous 24 hours, nothing special was recorded, but it's a normal situation. The Russians usually first carry out massive attacks, trying to deplete the Ukrainian resources, warehouses and ammo depots, exhaust the forces, and only then the Russians begin their major offensive operation. So either today the Russians will continue with their massive strikes, or today the Russians will begin their offensive operation along the entire line of combat contact, and during the next several days we'll receive lots of updates on this matter. Now let's discuss the situation in the Dnipro direction. During the previous night, additional changes were recorded through the settlement of Novopidgorodne. This information was provided by pro-Russian sources, and according to this update, the Russians are about to establish complete control over the settlement. The Ukrainians control just the most northwestern parts of the settlement, but under the pressure of the armed force of the Russian Federation, most likely the Ukrainians sooner or later would be forced to fall back further in the northwestern direction towards the settlement of Raipolia. So these are the changes on the ground, and probably in coming days we'll receive a final report on this matter. Also, additional changes on the ground were recorded in the Dobropolye direction. According to different neutral mappers, the Russians improved their positions and forced Ukrainians to fall back from the Vodyanskaya mine number 2. Now let's talk about the city of Kostiantynivka. During the previous 12 hours, as you can see, the map has been adjusted once again. So this is the situation by the end of the 12th of May of 2026. This is the end of the 13th of May. Yesterday we discussed that the Russians answered the settlement of Malacharka, trying to encircle the city of Kostiantynivka from the east and from the northeast. And today we received the report that the Russians also improved their positions through the western parts of the city of Kostiantynivka, Kostiantynivka, and the Russians continue advancing further in the northern direction towards the Nakhalovka micro-district. So the Russians, it seems, are trying to establish complete control, let's say, over these territories. And if the Russians are able to take these territories under complete control, then of course the Ukrainians from the southwestern and the central parts of the city of Kostiantynivka would be caught in cauldron, and they would be forced to make some actions with the purpose to evacuate themselves from the western part of the city towards the eastern and the northeastern part. So the Russians, it seems, are trying to encircle. It seems that the Russians are not giving up this idea. The Krematorsk direction, additional changes on the ground were recorded around the village of Fedorovka. This information was provided by neutral mappers. According to these updates, the Russians have certain control over the territories between the settlements of Maiska and Fedorovka, and that the Russians continue advancing, trying to establish complete control over this village and to maintain the lines on the Ukrainian side of the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. Also, additional changes on the ground were recorded in the Slaviansk direction. In this video that was published by pro-Russian sources, we can see how Russians were securing trenches and fortifications belonged to the armed forces of Ukraine. Here we can see a Russian soldier that dropped a grenade inside of a stronghold, and as a result of this attack, the stronghold was secured. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map in the Russian favor. Furthermore, this morning, pro-Russian sources published a video from the settlements of Kalinovka and Riznikovka. In this video, we can see many places, up to 4 places through these 2 villages, where the Russian soldiers were raising the Russian flags. So based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything, but these videos confirm Russian strong control over the territory and that the Russians continue advancing further in the western direction towards the cities of Alexandrovka and Nikolaevka. And by the way, today several sources stated that up to 40% of the settlement of Alexandrovka is already under complete and strong control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. As for the northern direction and the northern directions, no changes on the ground were recorded. We have covered most of the updates regarding the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. Now let's discuss another important update, is the situation that is currently taking place on the territory of China in Beijing. I would like to remind you that yesterday, before the meeting between the Trump and Xi Jinping, the Chinese embassy in the United States outlined 4 red lines in US-China relations that should not be questioned: the Taiwan issue, democracy and human rights, path and political systems, China's right to development. And yesterday, the President of the United States of America came to China. And for example, this is the moment when the President of the United States of America and President China met each other. We see that President Trump first tried to make his famous trick with shake hands, but it seems that Xi Jinping managed to control the situation and didn't allow the President of the United States of America to take his hand on his side of this sphere. Later, we start receiving different protocol videos of how both the presidents of China and the United States of America were meeting with representatives of both states, of both countries. Then we had a meeting behind the closed doors, and after this meeting we received lots of very important statements made by both presidents. Xi Jinping stated that I always believe that our countries have more common interests than differences. Success in one is one opportunity for other. The President of the United States of America stated that it's an honor to be with you, it's an honor to be your friend, and the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before. But telling the truth, and according to my understanding of the situation, it seems that the negotiation process between the United States of America and China has collapsed completely. Neither the Americans nor Chinese managed to find a solution about the Strait of Hormuz, about the future, about currencies, about artificial intelligence, about many other different things. The President Trump stated that you are a great leader. I say it to everybody that you are a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. This morning, sources stated that Chinese agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must be free for everybody, But once again, it seems that the negotiations have failed, and most likely in coming days, weeks or months we'll face the consequences of the failed negotiations in Beijing that took place yesterday on the 13th of May of 2026 between presidents of China and the United States of America. And that's it for the short video. The Military with Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.